Thank you for joining us this evening. I ask that you please silence your cell phones. At this time, I invite Pastor Dr. Alan Rosenberg from the Christian and Missionary Alliance Church to come forward and lead us in the invocation. Please all rise.
I will pray as I pray, and you pray as you pray, and we'll all be happy with that. Our gracious God and Father, the Bible records that in ancient Israel, each city had a wall of protection, and the entrance into the city was through the open gate. And certain people were selected to be gatekeepers to exclude harmful and hostile people from entering. Lord, the men and women who sit on the city council are your gatekeepers for San Bernardino. Lord, I pray that as the post-election session begins, cause your gatekeepers here to be wise, brave, fearless, loving, and respectful to one another and to all who appear for city business. We pray that the citizens of our city may live together in peace and harmony and love for one another. Lord, I pray that you will daily be the first one through the gates of San Bernardino and indeed dwell in our midst. In your holy, healing name we pray, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Rosenberg. Next, I invite Caitlin Zimmerman to come to the podium. She will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Caitlin is a fourth grader at Manuel Salinas Creative Arts Elementary School.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Once again, thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Dr. Rosenberg. We did not hold a closed session, so there's no reporting out. This time, I'd like to request a motion to approve the appointments of Mr. Ricky Van Johnson and Mr. Thomas Brickley to the Water Board.
So moved.
You have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
And we have a second. Call for the vote.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to go to a roll call vote because we're having a little technical difficulty. But I have a motion by Councilmember Mulvihill, second by Charette. And Councilmember Marquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Barrios?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdivia?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Brickley and Ricky Van Johnson to come forward and be sworn in by the clerk.
Good evening, gentlemen. If you'll repeat after me. Yes, please raise your right hand. I, Ricky Van Johnson.
I, Ricky Van Johnson.
I, Thomas Brickley.
Thomas Brickley.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. And that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Okay, great. Can you sign here?
It's hard following your legal.
Mr. Brickley, can you sign there?
Like I'm going back in the military here.
Okay, thank you, congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ricky?
Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to present this commission appointment to each of you. Ricky Van Johnson, hereby confer upon you by the mayor of the city of San Bernardino to serve as the member of the Water Board and you've now received the oath of office. Thank you very much. Give you a pin. And would you like to say a few words?
Honorable Mayor, honorable City Council members, public, good afternoon. I'm just honored once again to serve the city of San Bernardino, and I don't take this obligation lightly. You know, and I always say one of the greatest things in this world is the opportunity to be of service to others, and I thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I went through an interview process. I learned a lot about what the requirements are. I'm looking forward to being a part of the Water Board and help solving some of the problems that they are having and helping out with this city. So thank you for appointing me. Thank you.
Break with a little protocol here, and while I'm here, we'll take up the next item, which is the appointment of Mr. Clifford Cummings to the Measure Z Citizen Oversight Committee.
Move
Do we
for
have
approval.
a motion? A motion and a second. Call for the vote.
I had a motion by Councilmember Valdivia, second by Mulvihill. We're going to go to a roll call vote because we're still having technical difficulties. Councilmember Marquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Barrios?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdivia?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard? Yes. Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cummings is not able to be with us. He will take up his oath of office at a later. Is he here? No. Oh. We have an appointment, a reappointment of Mrs. Carolyn Tillman to the Library Board. We have a motion.
Move approval. Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion made by Councilmember Nickel, second by Mulvihill. Councilmember Marquez? Oh, excuse me. Motion by Councilmember Charette, second by Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Barrios? Valdivia?
No.
Charette?
Yes.
Nickel?
Yes.
Pissing? Yes. Mulvihill? Yes. Thank you. And that passes 6-1.
Thank you very much. Ms. Tillman here? Don't see her in the audience, so we'll ask her to be sworn in at a later time. Thank you. This time we'll move to the presentations. First presentation is of the mayor and the city council of City of San Bernardino. We hereby proclaim November 24th, 2018 as Small Business Saturday. We encourage our residents of our community across the region to support small businesses and merchants on Saturday, November 24th, and throughout the year. Additionally, the mayor and city council of the City of San Bernardino hereby proclaim and call upon all to toll bells in remembrance of those who served in World War I at 11 a.m. on November 11th, 2018. This time we'll invite the Chamber of Commerce to come forward for announcements.
Hello, good evening. I'm Leslie Stevens with the San Bernardino Area Chamber of Commerce. And Thursday, November 8th at 8 a.m., San Bernardino City Unified School District Community Gathering for Excellence at the National Orange Show. For reservations, call 381-1245. Thursday on November 8th from 4 to 6, grand opening ribbon cutting for a dental service located at 2500 Del Rosa Avenue. Program speeches at 5:15. Ribbon cutting will be at 5:30. For more information, call 951-588-4049. Saturday, November 10th at 11 a.m., Coalition of Local Car Clubs Veteran Day celebration at La Plaza Park, 685 Mount Vernon Avenue. For more information, call 855-9093. Saturday, November 10th at 5 p.m., the Unforgettables Foundation is hosting their Unforgettable Beauties and Beasts Masquerade Ball, held at the San Bernardino International Airport. For reservations, call 335-1600. Sunday, November 11th at 11 a.m., San Bernardino City Veterans Day Salute and Parade begins on 7th and D Street to Meadowbrook Park. For more information, call 384-5332. Thursday, December 15th at 11:30, Salvation Army Lunch with Mark Hansen, one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul, held at Arrowhead Country Club. For reservations, call 562-480-2654. Saturday, November 17th at 8 a.m., Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley is hosting their annual Santa Paws Pet Photos and Holiday Boutique at 374 West Orange Show Road. To participate, call 386-1400. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Appreciate your making us aware of those items. This time we'll invite the public to come forward, and first public speaker is Robert Porter.
Mayor, council, good people. I want to explain my reasoning a little bit for why I didn't jump on anyone's team for the elections. It's kind of like how my dad would have explained it was, you don't stick your hand in a bucket with two snakes that are fighting, because you're going to get bit. So I didn't really want to get bit, so I kind of stayed back a little bit and just watching what you guys did and how you reacted to things. And what really decided it for me was when Judge Cohn said that they were overzealous with the regulations over there in Fontana, and we kind of copied that. So that bugged me a little bit. So that was how I made my decision. But I'd also like to read a little quote from this wonderful book, As My Mother Would Say, by Judith Fayez. And she said, no hay mal que dure 100 años. So that means, translation, there is nothing bad that will last 100 years. So basically what I'm going to say is it's going to get better, and all the snake fighting and everything is over. And I know that the results come out on Friday, but a 500-vote margin is hard to beat. And congratulations, Mr. Valdivia. You worked very hard. I was impressed at how hard you worked. And you told me that you would win, and I really wasn't totally convinced because I thought this was like a roll of the dice, two Republicans running in the same race. But you pulled it off, right on. I'd like to congratulate Sandra Ibarra. She did an excellent job. She walked a lot of doors. She got out there, and she did a great job as well. Mr. Barrios, you're the man right there. Mr. Nickel, I'm glad to have you back here 100%. And you ran a good race, but I have to say, Mr. Ramos, the first Native American in our California Assembly. That is incredible. Congratulations, Mr. Ramos. You're really setting a precedent right there. And Ms. Surratt, congratulations. And thank you all for everything you do. And Mr. Mulvihill, yeah, we're coming for you. Have a great day. Robert Porter out.
Rita Gonzalez. Would you turn your mic on?
Hello. My name is Uraida Gonzalez, and I'm here on behalf of the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino to announce the start of our free monthly tenants' rights workshops in English and Spanish. We want to help the residents of San Bernardino learn about their rights as tenants and how we at Legal Aid can help them exercise those rights. The workshops will be November 15th, 2018, and December 13th, 2018, from 4 to 5 p.m. at 201 Northeast Street on the second floor in San Bernardino, zip code 92401. We will also have workshops in Spanish. The first one will be held on December 11th, 2018 at the same time and location. For more information, please call 909-340-4483. And if I may, I'd like to repeat the same announcement in Spanish.
Certainly.
Hola, estoy aquí representando a la Sociedad de Ayuda Legal de San Bernardino para anunciar el inicio de nuestros talleres mensuales y gratuitos. Nosotros queremos ayudar a los residentes de San Bernardino a conocer sus derechos como inquilinos y como nosotros en la Sociedad de Ayuda Legal podemos ayudar a ejercer esos derechos. El primer taller en español será el 11 de diciembre del 2018 a las 4 de la tarde hasta las 5 de la tarde en 201 Norte Calle E, en el segundo piso, en la ciudad de San Bernardino, código postal 92401. Para más información, llamar al 909-340-4484. Gracias. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Linda Magalenos.
Hi, good evening. My name is Linda Magallanes, and I am a citizen of the San Bernardino area since 15 years ago. Now I am a member of the We Are the Change movement, which I would like to say thank you to many of you that I have seen that you have come and share with us this marvelous experience of having San Bernardino beautiful again, and take our city and make it clean for our kids and our health and our environment. Right now, I am worried about an issue that I have been seeing recently, that over here in our Walgreens store located in Waterman and 9th and Baseline, right behind that store, there is a little community that is getting together homeless. And it's getting very worried because the amount is increasing in that area. Another location that I'm very worried about, it's 9th Street and Waterman. That little plaza in there, it's getting really dangerous, and it's affecting all the small businesses around that area. So I would like to please bring this forward to you and make the best possible to help us with these issues, because it's worrying our kids. My kids, I am a mom of 3 kids. My kids are getting worried about seeing all this happening in San Bernardino. And we would like to find out the ways to get together and do something good for us and good for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Luis Ojeda.
Hello. Hi to everybody. Well, congratulations to the winners and losers. And I think the winners are the citizens of this city because the way I see it, and I told this yesterday, I always thank God for the good, for the bad, and for the ugly. Because sometimes, He knows best, When you lose, you say, well, why did I lose? And they say, oh, thank God because I lost. So now we need to move forward. Now we need to leave everything behind. And the way I see it, everybody thinks that we have the answers. And we all think that our idea is the best idea. But the way I see it, everything shows by the results. I'm an action-driven person. And it's hard for me to wait for bureaucracy and to be calm when I see that everything is crumbling everywhere. So right now we have the opportunity to move forward, and for the people that has been in this government and the people that is coming in and the people that is going out, I think the challenge is just beginning. Because we all have to get together and just work out our differences and try to just get together and, and work for the city. Because I'm doing my share with our group, we are the change. And so far I'm happy to announce that we passed the 55 tons mark of trash. We've been doing it every Sunday, and we're going to keep doing it. And I've been telling everybody, we're not going to go in circles, just, picking up trash, and then next day is going to be the same way. So we need to come up with a strategy, to try to attack this problem in different angles, education, enforcement, and at the same time, it's something that the only reason why we decided to do it is to show the people that everybody was asking me, why are you doing it for? What are you in for? Nothing. I just want to help. And finally, after almost 8 months that I've been doing it, and people realize that I'm for real, that I'm just doing it because I want to see this city thrive, because we have everything. I told Mr. Charette the other day that we have the best opportunity in this town, because LA is like a Bentley, like a Porsche, all right? But any car needs wheels to move. It doesn't matter how fancy it is. So to all of you guys, let's get together. Let's work towards one goal, to make this city the #1 city in the Inland Empire and the Southern California. Why not the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Paula Gentry.
Hi, my name is Paula. First, I think all of you were a little scared and shocked at the people that showed up for the June 20th meeting, asking for the doors of the city shelter to stay open. So shocked that you really didn't know what to do. So you came up with a motion to give us another year to keep the doors open, while you found another way to do your agenda, which was to close them. It took you a couple months, but you came up with an idea. You sent a killer to manage the shelter. He came in with a badge, a gun, and an agenda, your agenda. His first impression was intimidation and murder. His first actions were to get rid of the volunteer groomers and a few volunteers. Then he went on to bigger things. He ordered the killing of 11 dogs, perfectly healthy ones, with a few waiting on a rescue and a couple with potential adopters. But he didn't care, and he finished his days with letting the employees know that if they didn't do what he asked, they could find other jobs. Wait, because things get better. He stopped the rescues and networkers from getting a list of dogs to be killed. The list is one of the last lifelines for the animals to be rescued or adopted. He instructed the vet shelters, the shelter works with, to no longer contact rescues about injured dogs that could be saved, and instead to kill them, even ones with minor injuries. He himself said he killed 89 dogs due to contagious disease. You would think he meant parvo or distemper, but no, it was kennel cough, perfectly treatable with antibiotics. He then put a limit to the areas where the volunteers can go. This includes isolation area, confiscated animals, and medical, which means those animals are not given the care they need or their kennels being cleaned properly. And when they are cleaned, it's with a hose and the terrified animals still in the kennel. He put up solid fences, making it impossible for animals to see out, potential adopters to see in, and families looking for lost pets not being able to see them. These fences are a detrimental environment to dogs. They are pack animals and highly sociable. These fences give them almost no human or animal contact, causing kennel stress. And that's biting at bars, turning circles, and cowering in corners. The volunteers that go in to take pictures of these animals to put on social media to get their information and pictures out for rescues and adoptions or families looking for their lost family member cannot get these pictures. Like I said before, these pictures are the last lifeline for these animals' survival. The fences are only upgrade the facility has had, and it's an upgrade that secludes the already terrified or injured animals. He's all but ensured the death of many of these animals. He won't let volunteers bring special food for animals that they won't eat the kennel food, and the kill rate of the shelter has jumped from 11% to 24%. Do you realize how many lives that takes? Think about it. But you all know all of this because we've informed you, but you still continue to do nothing. Why? Because you sent him there. It's your agenda. This is one more thing we have continually asked where the funds are that are budgeted for the shelter, and along with donations. And we always get them runaround, never an answer. They aren't going to the shelter except on fences. Food is even donated. Lieutenant Frank McComber is getting paid $258,000 a year to kill animals, and the only people not asking or answering the question of the funds are the ones lining their pockets with it. I am formally asking for an outside investigation into those funds and the way the shelter is being ran.
Ms. Gentry, if you could wrap it up, please.
I also have
Time's
a
expired.
petition demanding the immediate replacement of Lieutenant Frank McComber. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Lehman.
Good evening. I am a San Bernardino resident, and I too am embarrassed at the state of our shelter. When we came to the meeting on June 20th, and we were allowed an extra year to figure out how to fix this problem as opposed to sending it out, we had hope. With what we see now at the shelter, hope is dwindling. With what I hear about what is going on at the shelter, the reputation is embarrassing. It's horrible. Why are rescues and networkers and volunteers being turned away and banned? Why are dogs being hidden behind double fencing from adopters and families looking for their pets? How do these procedures lower the euthanasia rate? Injured dogs that come in are sent to the vet and euthanized immediately, which violates the Hayden law for stray hold. How does that help? I'm here to formally ask that something be done to make our shelter not represent our city the way that it is representing us, because it is frightfully embarrassing. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Colvin.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, Chief. My name is Elizabeth Colvin, and I am the founder and current president of Redlands Unleashed Fidos and Friends. We are the all-volunteer group that built the Redlands Dog Park that opened in 2011. After we completed that task and turned the dog park over to the city for management and future improvements, that group continued to raise money to support local charities and animal-related causes. So basically, we fundraise and we write checks. In the last year, our Redlands group has contributed over $10,000 either in outright cash or in the form of product and flea and tick preventative, things of that nature, and in kind to the city shelter and to rescues that support and provide spay and neuter to San Bernardino residents. So we're a Redlands organization, but we're very concerned about what's going on with the San Bernardino City Animal Shelter and just the community's animals as a whole, because it impacts all of us. We're your neighbors. I'm sure that many of you have seen the press release that was put out from the city manager's office. If you haven't, please take a look at it. It's on your website. And it goes through and it addresses some of the changes that have taken place recently since the former, I suppose he's still technically the shelter manager, was put on administrative leave. And the interim manager was brought in. The ladies before me referenced the fencing, discussing that there actually was already double fencing on some of the areas that were re-fenced, and now there's more of a solid barrier. So it's a concern about how owners could find their animals if they're potentially in the isolation kennels. One of the things that really stood out to me, though, when I was reading through the press release, were all the references to causes to have to euthanize animals. I know more than the average person, but I'm not a rescue. I don't run a rescue. I have rescued. I've adopted dogs from San Bernardino. It is remarkable the army of volunteers and the effort and length that they will go to help animals. There are animals that are pulled from San Bernardino City that volunteers drive to locations like PetSmart in Santa Barbara to get them adopted. They do it on their own time, with their own money, and they're willing to do it. There's some concerns about communication with the volunteers and the rescues. We're here to help. They're here to help. There are literally hundreds of rescue groups that are willing and able to be active participants in saving animals' lives and to help in finding a solution to the situation at the shelter. Please let them help you.
Thank you. Jesse and Gabriela Quintana.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, hello. Good evening.
No.
Jesse and this is Gabriella.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was it you wanted to speak on?
The speed limit on
Okay.
Arrowhead.
We'll call you back during the public hearing.
Okay.
It didn't indicate on your speaker slip that that's what you want to speak
No
about.
problem. Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Amelia Lopez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amelia Lopez. I am a resident of the city, and I am also the president of the Neighborhood Association Council of San Bernardino. In 2016, we sent 5 of our presidents to attend the annual conference that took place in Omaha, Nebraska. This was the Neighborhood USA. Neighborhood USA is a national organization that focuses on building and strengthening neighborhood associations across the United States. Councilman Nichols and Valdivia also accompanied our little entourage. The experience for us was tremendous. We came back re-energized and with a renewed commitment to make our neighborhoods good places to live. And so in 2019, Neighborhood USA now is coming to Palm Springs in our backyard. How dare they come to our backyard? We need to be there. And so we anticipate also sending presidents, and that leads me to why I am here this evening. I have a couple of suggestions. One is I need help to send as many presidents that I can to the conference. And if you have money somewhere lying in your budget ward, just waiting to jump up and do something positive, come see me. Don't be shy, come see me, because I'm looking for registration and other things. You may also know other like-minded people in the community who would be willing to invest in our neighborhoods by helping us to defray the cost. Please send them our way. We also anticipate doing an exhibit And we have invited the city of San Bernardino through the city manager's office. And Andrea did get an email from Tanya the other day saying we are going to move forward on this. And the reason for that is because it's being held here in Palm Springs. And believe me, you're going to get participants because they attract, Mr. Nichols, Mr. Valdivia, a couple of thousand people coming from all across the United States. But because it's going to be located so close to here, you know that you're going to get a lot of cities from all of Southern California. And believe me, they have all heard about what has happened in San Bernardino, about the bankruptcy, about the terrorist attack, and they feel for us. And this is an opportunity, I think, for us to show that we are meeting the challenges that we are successfully meeting. So the NAC invited the city to go together with us to do an exhibit about what is happening in the neighborhoods and what we're doing, and we have spoken with the person there. But when I was having the conversation with the lady she works for the city of Palm Springs, she's coordinating the on-site logistics and everything, I asked her, are you still taking presenters? Because I know that the deadline has passed. And I asked her, and when she found out, when she heard my message, that I was from the city of San Bernardino, she called me back and she says, I was so surprised and thrilled to hear from somebody from this city. We know what has happened. She said she covered what had happened when she worked for Desert Hot Springs, and she would love to have some representation there at the city. So the exhibit is fine, but I did ask her, is she open for the city submitting something to present about how we are meeting the challenges? The theme for the conference is
time's expired, if you could wrap it up.
opening doors to the future. Doesn't that sound like us? Opening doors to the future. And I didn't hear about that part of the suggestion, Andrea, but she says she's willing to hear, not to worry about the deadline. I don't know if a workshop would be appropriate. They have General Assembly speakers and so forth, but it gives us an opportunity to address the perception that outside cities have about our community, and they'll get it straight from us. So please consider that. Thank you so much.
Carmel Rowe.
Well, I feel happy to go to work today. I've been off for a few months, but today it seemed like the sun was shining a little brighter, and maybe we shouldn't sell everything we own. So anyways, I just wanted to come, and I wanted to say goodbye, Ms. Marquez, and to ask you to please train the new person coming in, make it an easy transition. And Benito, I love you. And I just wanted to tell you that God told me to tell you this morning, that he put you there as a placeholder, and you held the place, and you did his work, and that he's proud of you. So he wanted me to relay that message. And John, you and I have a love-hate relationship, but I am very, 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 very happy to know that we will have somebody who doesn't really take any SHI, what the rest is, in the city, And Fred, well, I hate to say it, but I am sorry that you're still here. But I figure that with 5 and 2 vote, it wouldn't be so bad, and you're usually pretty reasonable. You usually get on the bandwagon. And Mayor Davis, after all the things I say to you, you're always very distinguished and you're always very cordial, and I appreciate it. However, I don't appreciate the code violations at my house, and I don't appreciate the harassment I've received. Henry, I did vote for you, but I didn't really want to vote for you because I didn't really want you to leave. You're good for the 5th Ward, and the 5th Ward appreciates you, and I couldn't really think of anybody that would better fill your shoes. Bessine, I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you've been here since you've been here. Mr. Mulvihill, I too am waiting for your replacement. I'd like to tell you guys, I'd like to ask you why I'm up here. Just make the transition very easy. Mr. Davis, don't fight with Mr. Valdivia, and just help him get his position. And please don't make any decisions that would be detrimental to the city in this transition, because that's really the only thing I fear for now, is that you try to finish the agenda that you guys started quickly, because you don't really have too much time. So please don't do that. And please work with the shelter. Please don't kill any more animals. The shelter here brings a lot of love to the city. We get a lot of blessings from the shelter. I mean, my dog came from the shelter. When my dog was arrested, I'm sure, Mayor, you remember that because you probably got about 50,000 emails. The dog lovers raised about $2,200 in a week to save my dog. So I know the magic that they bring, and I know what they can do, and I know the love that they bring. So please, 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 please stop killing the animals. Please work with the shelter. the Lowe's building, I've been saying it, you could put the homeless and the animal shelter right there at the Lowe's building off of Hallmark Parkway, and we could solve all of this. The water department could have their money, and the dogs could have a place to live. So I wanted to get up and say congratulations and farewell, and please don't waste all the marijuana taxes, because I'll be watching you and I'll be watching that money. Thank you.
Ruby Henderson.
Good evening. I'm Ruby Henderson. I've been in San Bernardino since 1980, and I was discriminated against last month from a towing company, and I never been, even with the gangs on the west side, because I take care of the gangs, and I try to encourage them to stay straight. Because my son got murdered 5 years ago, and I know the police department stood behind me then, and I know they'll stand behind me there now. But it's like we cannot have people in our community talking to us, against us about Jesus, because we live in a right world, that we live for the right thing. And if anybody need my help or assistance in San Bernardino for the west side, my name is Ruby Henderson. I live in the Door Jail. They on 19th in California, because all the gangs come to me when something happened or they gonna do something. I said, well, we got to pray about it. And that's how I've been out there for 30 years. I was on that football field with 5,000 children. And these children look up to me, but I never thought in my life I would be discriminated against from a toll company, because I parked one night in a parking spot. Forgot to put my handicap plaque in. I done had it 30 years. I've been handicapped 30 years. And I never been treated this way in my life. So I ask you, please, to help us handicapped mothers and our young children, because I'm there to help our community, not to destroy anybody or anyone. But I will talk to you like you talk to me, but I'm not going to disrespect you in any means. So I thank you.
Thank you. Major Jessica Carr. Now's the time to speak on it.
Good evening. My name is Major Jessica Carr, and along with my husband, Major Tim Carr, we are the new officers, the new leaders of the Salvation Army here in San Bernardino, and we're absolutely thrilled to be given this appointment. I'm here on behalf of the Salvation Army and other service providers who work with homeless individuals, and asking you to consider voting yes on item number 22, declaring the ability for the city manager to sign off on HEAP funding, as well as a comprehensive homeless service plan, as well as, and most importantly for us, is declaring a shelter crisis. The Salvation Army has been in our community since 1887, and we've been working with the hurting, the helpless, the homeless for many, many years, and we've helped many, many, many people end their homelessness. The Salvation Army currently would like to convert its 2-year transitional housing program to a Housing First focused 6-month or less emergency shelter for families who are homeless and single women who are homeless. There's been many studies done, and it has shown that transitional housing outcomes of permanent housing, as well as short-term housing focused emergency shelter programs have no statistical difference about the outcomes of exits to permanent housing. Having a housing first housing focus in your shelter allows the families and individuals to obtain and be that's their primary focus, rather than staying for many years. Having a short-term program allows the Salvation Army to help more and more individuals end their homelessness. I have a long background in homeless services in many communities, and I myself have experienced homelessness as a young person, and I know that the Salvation Army and other service providers will be able to end homelessness for individuals if funding is made available. HEAP fund, a shelter crisis, will allow the Salvation Army to be eligible for shelter operational funding, and that will allow us to make that change. Our results for our program have been great, but we can do better. And if a shelter crisis is not considered, then we will stick with our 2-year long-term program, and I will be very sad. So vote yes on a shelter declaration, because a happy Jessica is a good Jessica. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Barbara Babcock?
Good afternoon. Both majors, Tim and Jessica, are just amazing people. They spoke for my Rotary Club about 2 weeks ago. And usually I'm taking notes on my computer, cell phone. I just listen the whole time. Thank you, guys. Well, I want to start off with 2 positive things that I'm going to talk from my heart. First of all, Andrea, they fixed my road. There's still a little problem that needs to be fixed, but you guys are sending out good people, doing the right thing, and when there was a problem, I wrote you, and I thank you for that. The other person I want to acknowledge is the mayor's wife, Janetta. That woman is a saint. You're lucky, Mayor, you married up, but I hope you know that. You're supposed to nod and go, yes, I know, I married up. There you go. That's it. I love this city. Actually, when I went to bed at about 2:30 this morning, I thought I was going to be up mad and upset, and John, a little bit I was. I'll just be honest. John and I I have a problem with John at times, and he knows that. But you know what? The person that is elected legally is the person that I'm going to support. I want to comment on 3 things that I hear are rumors, and I'm pretty straightforward. 3 things that I have heard that you're going to do within your first year. And I don't want you to respond now. You can do it later. Number 1 is that 3 people you're going to get rid of. Chief Bergwan, Andrea, and Trish. It's what I've heard. I don't like it. Address it at some point. Tom Brickley, I'm glad that you're on the Water Commission. And you didn't dress up for the event, though, did you? Actually, he's been out working. As he came in, he said, I didn't have time to go home and change. We have some wonderful people in this city. We have people that give a darn. And we need to make sure that they stay and that they work. You know, we still have another couple days until the final results are in. You may not have known this, but in my old life, I was a violinist and an opera singer. And you've heard the saying, it's not over until the fat lady sings. Well, I'm not fat anymore, and I'm not going to sing, but I love this city. Thank you.
Sun Kim?
Good evening, Council, Mayor Davis. Let's see. I have so much on my mind, as always, and I guess I need to focus on the homeless. Is an opportunity for us in the city to create a model homeless program. The money is here. The state is giving us more funds if you declare a housing emergency. So if we could do that right away, we could begin our new city venture into I'm sorry, I have so much on my mind. The homeless issue is related with the care of our animals. And I know that we have such a grassroots support for our homeless, or for our shelters, and the city, I know, is open to creating a state-of-the-art facility here in the city. I wanted to mention that I went to Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, and I met my friends who happened to have a dog that had been driven up there to be taken care of. Apparently, San Bernardino is infamous in the United States for a center where dogs come from. So I know there's a community out there that is watching, and I think that shelter is something that you will all benefit from if you put resources toward it. And of course, it probably won't cost the city much money. From what I'm gathering from the support that you have here in the city. Congratulations to all the winners and losers in this election. It was really interesting to watch, and I think our city is on the way to a wonderful future. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Chow.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations and happy goodbyes to the rest of you who we really appreciate all you've done for the city, and we'll see you around, of course. My name is Alice Chow, and I'm a volunteer at the shelter. I'm a teacher with the school district, and I'm with Dream Team Angels Rescue, as well as the San Bernardino City Animal Care Foundation that wants to partner with the city to build a new shelter. I wanted to touch base upon what the others had spoken about, the rescue groups and volunteers. San Bernardino City is very famous for the animals that go to other states. So our volunteer base and donors are out of city. Some of our volunteers drive out from Santa Clarita, some from San Diego. They come to clean our cat rooms all day, cleaning up stuff. We have donors that drive 1 to 2 hours to drop off blankets, canned cat food, disinfectant, whatever we need. And it's last minute. We always get like an SOS last minute. We need cat food, pine litter. Anyway, so I work with several rescues who are from out of state, Washington, Canada, Oregon. We have a rescue partner in Connecticut. So what we do is we pull the animals, dogs and cats. We pay for their medical care, their vaccinations, get them healthy. They're in foster homes, so it's just like someone like you taking in a dog for 1 to 2 months, or a cat. And we send them to different areas. And we're known in San Bernardino for our wonderful Chihuahuas and Pit Bulls that other states love. We had an adopter, my own rescue. We had a gray Pit Bull, which is very common in San Bernardino. They call them blue nose, but there's no such thing. It's just because the color and the nose is the same. Anyways, our adopter in Washington said, I had someone come up to me and say, is that a blue-nosed pit bull? And she said, yeah. And they said, that is such a rare type of dog. And her fear was that that person was going to steal her pit bull that she got from San Bernardino. And that touched our hearts because we have at least 20 solid pit bulls that are gray at the San Bernardino shelter all the time. Okay? And for someone out of state to cherish their San Bernardino gray pit bull like that touched our hearts. And I just hope that you're willing to work with us so that we can make the shelter better. We're ready to go. Congratulations, John. We're ready to go to make great changes happen. We have backings from other cities. Our donors are ready. Our volunteers are ready. We just need a little bit of cooperation. We will do all the work. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now ask council members if you have any items to pull. Councilmember Marquez.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull number 10.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes.
I sent in a request to speak by email.
Oh, I didn't receive it, but. Ricky Van Johnson.
Well, thank you. Good evening once again. One of the things that's awesome about our country is we have a transition of power, orderly transition of power. And so with that said, I'd like to congratulate you, Mayor Davis, on your time here. You did what I consider a great work. You came in during a very challenging period. And also congratulate you, Mr. Valdivia, on your victory. Looking forward to your time of service, as well as you, Councilmember Charette. Your leadership will be valuable during this transitional period in the next 4 years. Also, on a shifting notes, on Sunday, September 30th, Akuma Unity Center held Jazz in the Park at Ansharells Park. It was a very successful event. We had an awesome time. There was people there I hadn't seen since the 70s. There was at least 500 people that came out. Jazz played for 5 hours, and people just really enjoyed themselves. And at this time, I really want to thank the partnerships that we had with the city, specifically the Park and Recreation Department. Jim Tickmeyer, Cynthia Alvarado, Gino Ornelas, Mike Rosales, Elizabeth Mora Rodriguez. Thank you. We're looking forward to doing this again next year, and we know that it's going to grow from here. Maybe in the 5 years we'll be up in Coachella area. But once again, your partnership with the city was truly valuable, and we had a very successful time, and that we know that we cannot spell success without you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barrios?
None, Mayor.
Councilmember Valdivia? Councilman Shred?
None, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Richard?
No.
All right, thank you. We have a motion, a second. Call for the vote.
We're voting electronically? Yes. We are?
Yes, we'll be voting electronic. Just 1 second.
Doesn't show. Oh, there it goes.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Mulvihill, second by Councilmember Valdivia. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 10 is a recommendation to adopt Resolution 2018-274 of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino approving temporary right of entry agreement with San Bernardino County Transportation Authority for temporary construction activities across the parcels known as APN 0136, 03327, and 0136-12278 in connection with the Redlands Passenger Rail Program project. Councilmember Marquez?
Thank you, Mayor. For the purposes of recusal, I have to leave the dais. There is a conflict of interest because I own property 500 feet of this project, and I just want to be safe, so I'm leaving.
All right.
Second.
Let's let her get out of the room. Hurry, Councilmember Marquez.
No discussion.
All right. Call for the vote.
Motion made by Councilmember Valdivia, second by Charette, and that passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next is item number 20. receive an oral report by Councilmember Jim Mulvihill related to the American Planning Association California Conference update held October 7th through October 10th, 2018. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Thank you, Mayor. The APA conference in San Diego was the 7th anniversary of the Cal APA, American Planning Association. The three-day conference included 103 sessions, 13 workshops, and 2 keynote addresses. Session topics covered a diverse range: climate action planning, political redistricting planning, i.e. zoning and violence prevention, leadership in uncertain times, tree preservations, housing the homeless, smart phones, smart cars, and smart parks, to mention a few. I attended 9 sessions, mostly geared towards affordable housing, transit-oriented development, for the most part. What was especially interesting, the opening keynote address was made by Assemblyman Todd Gloria, who's from the San Diego area, outlined California's housing crisis. The most pressing problem lies with the middle income or move-up housing. A large part of the severity, I'm just sort of quoting with my notes, large part of the severity of California's housing crisis is the pressure it puts on middle-class families, those earning between $30,000 to $60,000. These are Californians that have jobs, work full-time, and still are priced out of the market and are unable to qualify for subsidized housing. It's sort of the middle-class problem that seems to crop up all the time. He gave examples from the San Diego area. Between 2010 2018, 30,000 units were built in the metro area, of which 28,000 were upper end, 4,400 were lower end for lower very income family, and 33 out of the 28,000 were for moderate income families. This he referred to as being unsustainable. In response, Assemblyman Gloria has sponsored and has been passed by and signed by the governor AB 2372, California's Sustainable and Affordable Housing Act, CASA, which was signed by the governor. In lieu of the density bonus, this bill allows a reduction in the floor area as long as these units are within the same building envelope. AB 2372 authorizes the use of a new floor area ratio based on calculations encouraging smaller and therefore less expensive housing units. Project height will continue to be regulated by the underlying zone, the base zone, and also permits the developer impact fees to be calculated based on square feet rather than per unit, on a per unit basis. In order to qualify, the proposed project must be located in a transit priority area, among others. Another session dealt with commercial industrial uses in transit areas. Job growth near transit stations have been more rapid. Examples were given the Orange Line in Van Nuys and North Hollywood, where older industrial structures have been reoccupied. Also in Santa Monica, the Bundy Station at Bundy and Olympic on the Expo line was highlighted for industrial and some residential uses. There was another session, Can Housing Be Affordable and Environmentally Conscious? And the constraints on housing, of course, and the regulatory barriers, downzoning, historic preservation, among other words. But I guess the moderator, who was from BB&K, one of your cohorts, Alicia Winterswick, yes, she spoke specifically and from a publication, a 2018 publication from the League of California Cities about the 2017 housing laws, and this is a good one to get your hands on. The 2018 Guide to New Housing Law in California from the League of California Cities. This is what I was reading on last time that dealt with SB 35, but there's other things that are within there as well. And it dealt with the RENA, and actually there was another session that I'm going to talk about here now that dealt with regional housing needs. Melinda McCoy, who is with the Department of Housing and Community Development, expects the state to become more aggressive in getting compliance to state mandates. She described SB 35 as a game changer, linking non-achievement of RENA allocation with a developer's opportunity to demand by right ministerial permitting. Along with SB 35, she cited SB 167, AB 678, and this is all inside here, which toughens the Housing Accountability Act by limiting the ability of a jurisdiction to deny an affordable or market-rate housing project. Findings for denial must be based on preponderance of evidence rather than previously simply substantial evidence. If a court finds, again, this is part of the SB and AB regulation, if a court finds that a jurisdiction's findings are not supported, the court must issue a compelling compliance within 60 days, and if a court finds a jurisdiction acted in bad faith when it disapproved or conditionally approved a housing project, it can order a jurisdiction to approve the housing development. Ms. McCoy referred to this year's SB 1333, which specifies the provision of the planning and zoning law regarding general plans, specific plans, and the adoption and review of housing elements apply to charter cities as well as general law cities. And that's pretty much it. There were other interesting sessions, but I'll leave those for another time.
Thank you. Any questions, council members? Councilman Nickel?
Yeah, could we maybe at some point get those bill numbers? Those are pending bills?
Those have been passed.
They've been
Those bills, the ones that they're written about in here, except for the 1333,
Right.
which is a new one.
Okay.
That's this year, 1333.
Okay.
If the council would like, we can provide copies of that. It's a great publication, if you'd like copies of it, because it does reference those bills numbers and when they were passed and what the effect is. So if you'd like a copy of that, we can provide that.
And again, I think it seems that almost daily you see something in the newspaper. There was an article in the LA Times a couple of Sundays ago that said only 4% of California jurisdictions are compliant with their RENA numbers, which means that they're liable for SB 35, not that it would all take place at one time. There's only really been one development up in the Vallejo area, I believe, that has actually gone through the process and has overcome a jurisdiction's negative response. The Valco shopping mall.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add one thing to that. I think one of the things that we need to be proud of in this region, and hopefully the state does not, or it recognizes the efforts that have been made in the Inland Empire. We have a lot of housing units that are entitled. You have other parts of the state where they're not entitling housing units. Actually, in the Inland Empire, if you look at all of us collectively, we have thousands and thousands of units that are entitled and just aren't being constructed. So we want to make sure that there's an acknowledgement that there are regions that are working through the entitlement. It doesn't mean that we don't have work to do, but we do have a process in place where we're attempting to streamline those and get housing projects started. Our challenge really has been in the development and actually getting developers to then build the entitled units. So I think we need to be cautious as we look at legislation. Sometimes they're writing legislation that addresses the entire state of California, and really our issues in the Inland Empire are fairly unique.
And I think some of the issues that were brought up, it's not just the fact that cities are reluctant, but the fact of land costs are going up, labor costs are going up, materials costs are going up. There was a BIA session back in June in which the individuals from the BIA were talking about most of our construction lumber has come from Canada. And with the new import duties, has created problems there, and also the fact that high housing costs has forced a lot of people in that income category, which includes construction workers, to leave the state. And there's other states that are booming, Nevada, Texas, and so forth. And why stay in California when you can't buy a house or afford the rent levels? So we're in, again, it's kind of we shot ourselves in the foot in a way, but it's the kind of a situation that we need to, I guess, get a general understanding of. The irony of it is that if the solution obviously is to build more housing and to create means that housing can be constructed and to get developers to propose housing projects. But on the other hand, for some people, having more housing means that if you own a home, you're in good shape. Your housing prices have been skyrocketing, and more housing will just slow that price increase down. So there's kind of a beggar thy neighbor aspect to this, or kind of a lifeboat ethic. You're on the lifeboat, don't let anybody else on, which is kind of, yeah. But again, there's an attitude out there, and so information and knowledge as to what it's doing to California. I think I've spoken about this before, is that there are many groups who are leaving California, millennial, the young people who are our future, and for a good reason. You can't afford to buy a house in California unless you've got, again, San Bernardino is affordable, yet the median house price of house is $250,000. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Next is item number 21. Item number 21 is a recommendation to approve the recommended criteria changes, which we now include immediate family members of retired employees and full-time contract employees with 1 year of service.
Move
with
to
the city.
approve. Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion?
I guess they like what they saw. Any questions from the dais? No?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
As I was reading, it says that you now include immediate family members of retired employees, but in the past, was that an issue, or as far as getting retired employees, family members that are veterans?
No, we just decided to open it up a little bit more.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. No further discussion. Please call for the vote.
Motion made by Councilmember Nichols, seconded by Councilmember Valdivia, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is item number 22, is to approve a policy establishing a comprehensive response to homelessness. Authorize city manager to issue letters of support for the HEAP applications and adopt resolution declaring the shelter crisis. City manager?
Mayor, members of the council, this is kind of a complex staff report, and so we'll walk through it and then identify some of the very specific things that we're suggesting this evening. As the council's aware, there's some funding that's available through the HEAP program for cities and nonprofit agencies to assist with the development of homelessness services and programs that would shelter homeless people in our communities. This is one-time funding, although there is some discussion that it may then eventually become longer-term funding that might be available to the communities. It's open to the counties, the continuums of care, it's open to the cities, and it's open to the nonprofits. There's about $9.4 million of funds that have been allocated for the San Bernardino Continuum of Care. The county through the Interagency Council on Homelessness, I always confuse the name of that, but that Interagency Council is going to be responsible, and we do have a seat on that group. They're going to be responsible for looking at all the various applications that come in from the agencies throughout the county and then making funding decisions. The county itself is a service provider. In fact, we rely heavily on the county services, especially in the areas of mental health, shelter. The city does not provide any direct shelter services or programs. We do collaborate with the county. We do have our own outreach workers that work as part of that county continuum of care. And so we do ask the county, we've tried to identify what our particular problems are in San Bernardino, and then ask the county to assist in developing programs that address those issues. The council has had numerous discussions about homelessness in the city. It's a tough discussion, and I think we're realizing that there is not one solution for homelessness in San Bernardino or anywhere else. This is really a nationwide problem, and it really stems in large part from a decision made many years ago to reduce the funding that was available and the on-site care that was available through the federal and state governments for mental health issues. And sadly, many of the people that we do see in our community do have mental health issues. The county has been very responsive in terms of trying to expand the mental health services that are available. We just opened a new facility in San Bernardino, the Windsor Center. They have 20 beds, and they will take people that want to self-admit. They will also take people that are police officers, identify, and contact who indicates to them that they would like to or they're willing to accept some type of help. But 20 beds is not enough. We need to provide an even greater level of services through the county. In San Bernardino alone, we probably have 20 people that we could fill those beds with at any given time. The state did place a requirement on this funding, though, that we declare a shelter crisis, and the shelter crisis is defined in the California Government Code, and it's very specific. In order to qualify as a direct recipient of funding, we have to adopt this shelter crisis. We have some concerns with that, though, because we do spend a lot of time dealing with individuals. Because we do, this council is to be congratulated. We've developed a lot of facilities where we can take people to receive services. The council really has been one of the few cities in the county that has approved or has in the pipeline numerous places to take individuals that are experiencing homelessness. And so because of that, when we encounter people on the streets, we do try to refer them to programs, but at the end of the day, camping in our public streets and rights of ways and in our parks and things is dealt with, and we need to continue to be able to do that. So you'll notice that the shelter or the resolution before you is a little different than what was recommended by the state. The state, in requiring this shelter declaration as a requirement before they'll provide any direct funding to the agencies, did not want to see the language that we did include in this draft resolution for your consideration that says that in no way in adopting this are we going to then not enforce our own no camping laws, and we are still going to regulate activities on our public streets and rights of way. With that said, though, we think this resolution is sufficient for us to provide support to the agencies. The Salvation Army gave a great report a few minutes ago about their request for shelter, additional shelter funding through the HEAP program. And we have several groups that have approached us. We have a rough estimate because those groups have until just after our next council meeting to get letters of support from public agencies. But we have asked for a good understanding so we know about what that dollar value is. Those groups, just based on the estimates that we know, are about $11 million in funding requests from San Bernardino-based or groups that support San Bernardino programs. In addition to that, the county, because the cities came together and said there's some very specific things that we know are missing from our homeless programs in the agency or in this region, we wanted them to focus on employment services. We wanted them to focus on expanding the 211 system so that there are more outreach workers and also a place where people could go to get, navigating through the system has been a challenge, and we wanted them to expand those services, the navigation services, and then also, and maybe almost critically, we wanted them to significantly expand the mental health component to their program. So the county's application is about 11.4. There's multiple applications that the county has made. Their request is about $11.4 million. So just from this region, there's about $22 million in funding that's been requested through HEAP. We have about 9.4 that this continuum of care will be allowed to provide to different groups providing services to the county. So we're requesting this evening that you adopt that shelter declaration with that additional language that gives us the ability to continue to enforce our regulations, that you support or allow us to look at those applications and make some determinations as to whether or not they support our overall objectives. And again, we've identified those three very specific things that we think would help us in affecting change in San Bernardino. But the other thing that we're suggesting to help provide some guidance to staff, and we've talked about this in the past, I've spent a lot of time talking to you individually. We had the workshop several months ago now on homelessness, and it was really evident that we were concerned, given the magnitude of the problem, that we realized we needed to focus on people who are from this community, have a connection with this community, went to school here, because our resources really are very limited. You also, over the last several months, have, while approved approving multiple projects for transitional shelter programs that have wraparound services. You've also been very concerned with the impact of that on the neighborhood, and you've attempted to balance that need to provide the housing, but you also want to preserve the integrity of your neighborhoods, and you've indicated clearly that there are some places that you don't think are appropriate for those types of facilities if they're close to schools, and there have been some other things that you've discussed. So what we've attempted to do is to provide to you a policy, taking, again, all of the comments that have been made on the dais, the comments that were made during our discussions, and some of the other conversations that we've had, and we've tried to provide to you a comprehensive response that we would then use as a guide. So as we evaluate those proposed programs that are requesting funding, given the fact that we know we have a shortfall at least of about half, that we would then use this to kind of guide those groups that we provide support to. And I think really we want to rely heavily on the money to the county because the county is developing a more comprehensive approach to that. So again, we're really asking for 3 items this evening, and then I'll leave you on one last thing, and then I think there are multiple questions. And then I think we do need to talk to the state because it's really put us in a very difficult position that the state is requiring us to suspend our regulations related to shelters and the encampments that can be created in a community, but they've basically made a requirement that we suspend those things if we want to be a direct recipient. And I do struggle with that. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes. Now, the $9.4 million that the counties, how do jurisdictions access that? How's that going to happen?
So agencies have had the ability to provide applications for HEAP funding. Several agencies have, primarily nonprofits. There are a couple of cities that wanted to, it's my understanding, I haven't seen the applications, but from talking to the city managers, there were a couple of cities that have asked for some funding to do outreach services, much similar or very similar to what we're doing with Step Up. And these are cities that really don't have the access to the HUD funds that we do. Remember, we are a direct recipient, and so these are cities that don't have the kinds of HUD dollars available to them. So it's my understanding that there are a couple of applications from cities to do outreach services. Most, though, of the other applicants are nonprofits, and then the County of San Bernardino is a huge wants to be a huge recipient, and so they've requested about $11.4 million.
So we're going to encourage our nonprofits to...
We've already, the county put that information out to the nonprofits, and we had the Salvation Army here tonight, but we've had several other nonprofits, either in the community or that serve our community, indicate that they do plan to apply for funding, and that's why we're asking for you to adopt this modified shelter declaration, because one of the other requirements, in order for, I guess the easiest way is that in order for our support letter to count, we have to have adopted a declaration.
I see, the modified declaration.
Yes, yeah, and they've indicated, since we're not requesting to be a direct recipient of these funds, the more modified declaration would serve that purpose in supporting applications.
I appreciate the statements that were made by the Salvation Army majors, and I've also heard comments from citizens in my community. Why aren't we applying for this? Well, in fact, we are applying for it, but to declare carte blanche a homeless emergency, really, there's a quid pro quo. They would have to suspend our control. And, citizens in my ward, and I think throughout the city, do not want homeless people camping on the streets, and that's what this would permit. In our parks, we have a tough time keeping our parks cleaned up, and I keep on hearing that our parks are not cleaned up well enough. No. And so declaring a homeless emergency carte blanche would simply allow that to happen. We couldn't stop it. And so that's why this modification is being made.
And the other kind of point to that is we do rely on the county because the county has, the county is a social services provider. And so the county has invested, and I know we have a couple of county people here, they've got tremendous workforce development programs, and they've got an amazing behavioral health program, and I think we want to see those programs expand rather than the city trying to develop its own behavioral health program. It's not really what we do. They do it very well, and I think we want to encourage the county to expand that program. The Windsor Center was a terrific start, and there are other programs like that in the region that we utilize. but we really need to dramatically expand the number of units that are available or beds that are available when we have people in this community that are indicating that they need assistance. So we are not asking to be a direct recipient in part because of the regulations, but also in part because the county already has a structure in place, and we've asked the county to focus on those 3 areas, recognizing that's what we find is our biggest challenge as we're trying to get people into the services that they need.
Councilman Nickel?
Yeah, just reading through the resolution, packet page 458, I'm looking at section 3, and I assume that's what we're referring to.
That is.
Okay, nothing in this resolution shall be interpreted to prevent the city from enforcing any laws which prohibit camping on public property, including but not limited to Chapter 12.98 of the San Bernardino Municipal Code, where an individual is camping for reasons other than necessity. What does that term "other than necessity" mean?
Really, in this community, we are fortunate in that we do have a number of places where we are able, so that when we encounter someone and they say, I am willing to get assistance, we have not struggled with finding necessarily a place for them to go. So as long as we have places for people to go, and this council has identified, and you have several that are currently underway in terms of being developed, so necessity would be we do have legitimate places for them to go.
Okay, and, I think this gets back to the issue that we dealt with time and time again. Once you build shelters,
Yes.
will they come?
That's right.
And that's the concern I'm hearing from my constituents.
And that's why I gave you the policy at the same time that says that we're going to focus on people from San Bernardino, people that have connections or family members here that have worked here, so that we can go back to, this is the council's policy, we are focused on providing services to these individuals because they are from our community.
So just to understand the intent of Chapter 12.98, if an individual is camping in Second Lake Park, and there is no shelter space available in the jurisdiction of the city of San Bernardino, they can continue camping at Second Lake Park.
It's not that cut and dry, and Sonia may want to chime in as well. It's not that cut and dry. It's availability within the region that is reasonably available, and we feel confident that within this region, there are things that are reasonably available to people. When we, and we have to evaluate that. If we get to the point where we find that there's nothing reasonably available, then we'll have to have another conversation.
And who keeps the inventory of the shelters, and who is responsible for understanding whether or not there is shelter space available or not available at any one of these shelters at any particular time?
That's one of the critical reasons why it's important that we're an active member of ICH, because ICH, through the 211 system, does maintain an inventory of what's available.
They do?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And
at any time, they can tell us we have capacity at shelter X, Y, or Z.
And yes, and one of the discussions at the ICH is that ongoing dialogue about, are we noticing that we're getting to a point, and ICH is regularly, and the Office of Homeless Services through the county, and they're constantly reviewing kind of what's our capacity been historically. So a week ago and, or 2 weeks ago up to present day, are we really getting to the point where we're at capacity? Because then ICH will need to have another discussion about earmarking dollars for that temporary shelter space.
And just to wrap up here, when we say regional capacity, what does that encompass? 1, 2 cities, particular radius, particular accessibility?
We try to focus on accessibility, and the other thing that we do have access to, and we have earmarked some funding for this. So if someone needs a bus pass to get there, we have resources. So if they say, I'm willing to go, it's in Rialto, but I don't have transportation, we're really trying to build up that cadre. In fact, that's one of the things that the county is requesting some additional funds for, is for that transportation program to those systems.
And 211 only covers San Bernardino county.
Except that they do have some connections with Riverside and some of the other Inland Empire areas, because we're finding that there are people that do want to return back to where they're from. That's another thing you'll notice, that we're looking at programs right now that we may be presenting to you where we maintain some funding, so that if we have someone that says, you know, I'm from Indiana and my family, I really want to get back to where my family is. Right now, we're kind of relying on the county service to make sure we have funding available to send them to their home state. And as long as the family member's there and is going to assist them, we can help return them to that. And so we'd like to kind of build up that capacity in terms of the county-wide program and also the cities.
So does or does not 211 include shelter capacity, say, in the city of Riverside?
Yes, they will call them.
They will.
Yeah, but they don't have access to it through their computer systems. They actually have to make some phone calls and follow up on it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Barrios?
I know Eddie Estrada had put in a request to speak. Are we going to let speakers speak on this?
We already passed that time.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I did want to just clarify and think of, you know, for us to do this, we can focus on permanent housing as well, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, these dollars, if they're construction dollars, we would have to adopt a shelter declaration that really suspends our zoning, the enforceability.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to ensure that the project we approve for U.S. vets in the second ward for the two veteran housing projects, that everybody understands it's not a shelter. It is permanent housing for veterans, and that actually the schools nearby, specifically San Bernardino High School, are looking forward to adopting those two properties, or the veterans that go there.
Mhm.
And they're looking forward, the community's looking forward as well to having something built instead of having a field with trash in it.
Mhm.
And I know that U.S. Vets is going to do an amazing job, because I've seen their projects throughout Southern California that they've been building, and hopefully they can be a part of this whole program and take advantage of the funds available.
Now, remember the policy that we're suggesting that you adopt, though, does not take away your ability. In fact, what it does is reserve to you, the mayor and city council, the opportunity to define where it is you want to have those.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just having them pop up, we think it's important, based on what you've all said, that you want to be able to evaluate each one on a case-by-case basis and make a determination as to whether or not that works in that area for your community. So in the case of U.S. Vets, you ultimately, as a council, determined that worked because of the potential connections with San Bernardino High School. There may be other areas where you choose not to have that, though. So we want to reserve the authority to the mayor and city council to make that determination, not just zone it so that they have a right to go there without it coming to you.
Okay. I just wanted to speak on that, because I know that when it comes later on, I may not be here. So
we won't forget.
And just so the council knows, the remaining council, that the community is looking forward to these properties being built up. Thank you.
I think also to clarify, Councilman, that this doesn't restrict them from applying to the
No.
with the county.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councilman Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrea, this is a complicated agenda item. I read it and reread it at least 3-4 times, and I think I get it. To summarize, the city attorney's office has created a modified resolution that ensures San Bernardino to retain its discretion with respect to local zoning. This way we won't have pop-ups, and ensures continued enforceability of laws prohibiting camping on public property.
That's right, while still allowing you, though, to adopt something that then gives us the opportunity to support, like Councilmember Barrios just raised, the issue with U.S. Vets.
Right.
There may be some programs, the Salvation Army runs a very comprehensive
Yes, they
program.
do.
It's one that we benefit from. So it does give us the latitude to support those that we think are doing good work in our community, but also protects the zoning control to the
Right.
city. So we've tried to modify the resolution in a way that, again, preserves your ability to regulate the use of public property, but also gives us the ability to support those groups that we know are doing good work in
And
the city.
continue to be the partner.
That's
Got
right.
it. And then my second comment, just as an FYI, Councilmember Charette and I sit on the ICH. board, and I will be attending the meeting on the 28th. I've made some changes on that. We voted on creating a grant review ad hoc committee.
Yes.
And so they will be meeting tomorrow and Friday to start reviewing the applications.
That's terrific. And I think we have a benefit in that, we worked with the county to try to really focus in on those applications and address things that we see are problematic in the community. That group is going to be reviewing those applications, and just to reiterate, the county's application alone is $11.4 million. There's $9.4 million available, and so I think ICH is going to have some very tough decisions to make. But by being on that group and not requesting funding directly, we have an ability to kind of direct how those funds will be deployed.
Right. Just as an FYI also, I was not chosen, obviously, because it would be a conflict of interest to be part of the grant ad hoc committee, but we'll be looking at the results, the recommendations.
Well, and I would disagree that it's a conflict because we've not requested funding directly.
Not even once?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I will assist with that.
I think part of the issue here, and one of the reasons for the recommendation, is so that the city does retain its opportunities to be able to have the discretion, and also then to encourage other communities to take and provide some of the shelters that in the past have been lacking. And this helps them to realize that there's an opportunity for them to have some resources made available. And also, I think it's helping us to not necessarily compete for those dollars, and then allows the county more discretion on how they, through the ICH, you're going to make those recommendations, and you're going to make those final determination. But I think this helps our community, because our community does more for homelessness than any other city in the entire county. So
I agree. We're at the forefront, and I wish that other municipalities would be on the same page as we are.
And others have adopted the declaration,
Yeah.
I think, as proposed by the state.
Well, there's a couple cities, I think 3, that utilize the one provided by the state, but there are several other communities, and the mayor and I did have a chance to talk to the mayors and city managers of all of our neighboring communities and said, your homeless strategy can't be sending them to San Bernardino, but this funding gave us an opportunity. It was, we were pretty direct about it, because everyone needs to step up. We have done a lot, and certainly we still have a lot of work to do, but we've done a lot to provide housing and wraparound services and transition people back into hopefully permanent situations. But the fact of the matter is, this did give us an opportunity to encourage them to, we recognize they have their own issues and they want to retain their own zoning control, but it did give us a chance to talk to them about some of the things that we're doing and maybe some of the ways that they can work with the county to provide the services that they need. So I'm hopeful that some of our neighboring communities are also going to support the county's program.
Councilman Valdivia.
Thank you. Ms. City Manager, I have a couple questions regarding who sits on the board. I think I got the answer. It's Fred and Virginia.
Currently from
And
the city.
are there terms on that board? Or?
There are, there really are not terms, but they do have a process whereby when someone withdraws, it's replaced. San Bernardino is one of a handful of cities. They've stratified cities so that there's one representative or one city represented of those cities that are 100,000 in population and over. So again, there's kind of stratas, and we currently do sit on that board. But there are other cities that could replace us at some
And so
point in the
Fred
future.
and Virginia are both voting members?
No, they are not.
They're alternates?
Yes, he's an alternate, and she is a voting member
Okay.
currently.
All right. And then
I have asked, though, that as we see the transition of council, I have talked to our cities that would be our competitors in that, cities that are also within that size bracket, and have indicated that we would like to continue to sit on that board. And so far, we haven't had any negative responses, so I'm hoping that we're able to continue.
would it be possible, I'd like to get a copy of the policy of the stratification of
The bylaws.
Yeah.
Their bylaws.
Can you provide that to the council? I'd appreciate that. Regarding the, you bring up a very good point. I understand that sometimes state, county, and other jurisdictions, I want to be respectful, but I think San Bernardino needs to come first in this whole kind of discussion. At times, the zoning laws don't apply to them.
Right.
So are you suggesting that we have some leverage here to tell county housing and county authorities that if they're going to build some type of shelter, it has to go through the approval process? Am I hearing that right?
I think what we've attempted to do in that regard is to preserve our ability to regulate. Certainly with the state education code, we cannot, because we cannot regulate state property, but with the county.
Meaning local schools
Local
and
schools.
universities and colleges?
That's right, primarily local schools, though, at the K-12 level. With respect to the county, they certainly do have a different interest, but what we're suggesting to them is we want to be part of the solution, but we want us to be able to vet those projects, and that's why you had projects like the Golden Apartments and things. So we're trying to run those, yes, also through the council, so you have an understanding of where they are and whether or not that fits with what you're.
Well, first off, I applaud that, because I think the council, the buck stops here with us, and we sometimes get the calls.
Yes.
Do you know, Councilman, that this apartment building, and we don't know.
Right.
And so we want to be kind of red tagged on some issues, and that's a really prevailing concern of mine. So I'm glad that if you're saying that we will be noticed and we will have that process in place.
That's part of the reason why it's so important to me that we maintain, to the extent we can, that seat on the ICH, because they're vetting those kinds of, or having those kinds of discussions, vetting projects and programs, and I think that's critical for us to have that connection.
And I think that the person or the persons, the alternate included, sitting on ICH should have those recommendations on policies when we send them to that ICH hearing, that they're not speaking for themselves, that they're
That's
speaking
right.
as a council.
And that's why I think having this policy to
Yep.
guide them, so that as they're making or voting and making suggestions about things, that they have some guidance. And really, I think over the next several months, we're going to be doing that with a whole bunch of different groups that the mayor and city council participate in.
Regarding the 211 call center, I'm a little concerned, and so maybe you can provide some clarification. The 211 call center, it will be funded with the $9.4 million. A portion of it, I would imagine, not the whole amount, but there's a portion going to 211 call center.
No, the county already funds the 211 call center.
Okay.
We've suggested to them that there's two issues that we're noticing as we're dealing with people in the community. When we refer people to the 211 center, we don't want them to have long wait times because they're homeless, and we want them to get service quickly because of their potential attention span. So we would like to see them expand that service, but we'd also like them to expand it to have more outreach workers. It's not only a call system, but they do have outreach workers that go out into the communities as well. We'd like to see them expand that outreach component. We'd also like them to expand the number of navigation individuals that they have working so that they can reduce the call time. And then we'd also like them to have some type of a component that's on site where people can actually go get service. But the county, to fund that, the county has made a request for HEAP funding. That's one of the projects that they've requested funding for that equates about $11.4 million.
So the 211 call center, when somebody calls in, let's say, for instance, homeless person ABC, calls into the call center, and they're asking, I need a bed, I need shelter, or our police department is calling the 211 center,
Right.
or how do we interface from dispatch? Because I want to free up a patrolman not having to serve, because as it's written here, I could kind of see we're going to prioritize homeless services. And so my question is, how are we going to do that? Who's going to do that? And how are we going to free our patrolmen so that they can actually have what they signed up to do, and that's protect our
Right.
community?
I want to make sure we're clear. The 211 system is not our system. It's a countywide system.
Uh-huh.
So we're not really calling the 211 system. We're just telling people when we encounter them in the field, if you're interested in receiving assistance, call 211 from anywhere in the county, and the navigation person will help you with
So
that.
you're saying that our police department never calls call center or interfaces with call center to get a bed?
They may, but it's really those homeless outreach workers. We have 2 of them now, and again, we're trying to get to the point where we return them to the field so that they're not even doing that.
And they're funded by the county, not by the city?
The 211 center is completely a
No,
city.
the outreach organizers.
The navigation outreach people from 211 are completely funded by the county. That's a county
Okay,
program.
cool.
Yeah.
My other kind of concern is, maybe you can allay my fears, the 211 call center, when somebody's calling there, and I don't know if you know the answer. If we don't, let's
Right.
answer, let's find out the
Right.
answer. are they somehow suggesting at the call center, okay, here's 92407, 92410, and all the city zip codes? I don't want that. That's my fear. It's kind of like what Councilman Nickel had suggested. I don't want this to be the hotbed for the homeless.
Right.
You provide some assurance on packet page 457, number 10, that the city supports an equitable distribution of facilities and services throughout the San Bernardino region, so that no one jurisdiction or community is impacted by providing more than its fair share of facilities and services, and will consider use of city surplus property to meet the local and regional affordable housing. So in that sentence, you kind of tell me that, well, we're going to have equitable distribution, but at the same time, you're saying, well, if there's surplus property here, that's up for grabs.
No, I'm saying that there's not, that we wouldn't. This proposed policy is a policy that we would use in terms of guiding our decisions about homeless services. The county, though, is the one that's administering the 211 program. They're making referrals to shelters or other services that are available throughout the county. They're trying to link people that are calling with the closest available service to them, and providing transportation where someone says, I really want to just get back to Rialto because that's where my family is, and so they're trying to give them the transportation services to get there. Really, in the declaration, what I'm saying is I think you need to reserve out. Part of the reason why we're not recommending the declaration that the state suggested in order for us to be a direct recipient is because I didn't want you to give up your zoning authority to say that property is not appropriate for that type of use. So that all those would still come back to the council, and the council has the ability to determine that is not really an appropriate use there. Maybe
Is that via the Planning Commission?
Yeah, through your regular zoning. So if it's a requirement through the Planning Commission, it would go through your Planning Commission.
So the Planning Commissioners are going to hear it, not us?
But
because the first stop would be the
them
Planning
and
Commission.
Right.
Is all those homeless issues, I mean, do they have unilateral jurisdiction, the Planning Commission, do they have the authority to just pass any homeless shelter in our community, or will it ultimately come back for us for final approval?
Our goal would be that everything like that come back to you because, again, we recognize that there's a sensitivity. Maybe it is fine around a local high school, but there may be somewhere it's not appropriate. So, again, I think you're going to have the better sensitivity to where those things should be zoned and where they should not be zoned.
So I hope that's true, and I applaud that. If that is indeed the direction here, great, because planning commissioners, God bless them, I love them to death, but they don't have we need to hear about it.
I agree. And then the other just thing, and it's a little off topic, but I think it's important and relevant. Remember, with all the changes now we've made to your advisory bodies, the goal is then we're providing some training to them. We're providing the vision and the goals and objectives that you've provided to us. We've given that to all the commissioners, and then I'd like to get to the point where you meet with them each year to say, these are our things that we're sensitive as a mayor and council about. These are the things we want you to pay attention to. Where you're getting their minutes now, so that you see as things come before them, so that you know what they're hearing, what they've got coming up. So again, we're trying to increase that communication so you do have a sense of what they're working on, so that you have a heads up long before it gets to you.
Thank you.
Councilman Richard.
Yes, thank you. Through all this conversation, one of my questions was answered because I wanted to know how many other cities declared a shelter crisis, because that's important.
I think it was 3.
Within the whole county of San Bernardino, and because we don't want all of them to
That's right.
to just come to San Bernardino. The other question is, because we modified this resolution, will that stop some of the nonprofits or the county from applying for these funds?
What we've been told is that the state is going to look with more scrutiny, and I'm giving you almost kind of verbatim, that they're going to look with more scrutiny if we are a direct recipient. If we are not a direct recipient, but we are providing a letter of support, then they're going to just check that you've adopted some kind of a declaration or a resolution indicating that you realize that there's a need for shelter services. So we added the language there, and we don't anticipate it's going to be an issue.
Okay, and approximately how many nonprofits have come
At
forward?
this time, I think we have 12 or 11.
19 at the time we
Yeah, 19, and they're still coming in because they have until like December 12th, I think, to their 10th to get their letters of support. So they're going to continue coming in.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And that's why I say, just to finish that completely, and that's why I say right now, we totaled them up, and I think last time I heard it was like $11.5 million just from the local nonprofits and their requests. Then the county has, and I haven't seen this application either, but it's my understanding that their applications, there were 4 or 5 of them, and they totaled $11.4 million, and we have, in this region, we have $9.4 million to give. So, there are going to be a lot of people and agencies that don't get funding, I think, potentially. Yeah.
Councilman Nichol.
Yeah, on packet page 455, the last bullet point there, and hate to continue harping on this 211 issue, but I think it's really critical because we're really relying on the county and the 211 system to provide for the management and placement of these individuals. And I think for us to really ensure that we've got a good system of ensuring performance and that we're adhering to the intent of this program, do we get numbers on how many they've placed and how many they've referred? Are we getting that kind of data coming back? I mean, I always see the numbers in terms of how many homeless we have, but I don't think to date I've ever seen data in terms of how many individuals are actually getting referred through 211 and placed in shelters. Do we ever get that data?
We get it in an aggregate basis, and one of the things we've been working with the Office of Homeless Services to do, and they've asked for funding to kind of expedite this process too, is to be able to separate it by city jurisdiction, and then by city's jurisdiction, what were the services that someone was referred to.
I think that would be really helpful because, I want to trust, but I think we have to verify that we're actually addressing this crisis effectively. And from the way it sounds, 211 is really the mechanism in which that is happening, and I think we really need to ensure that going forward, if we are to increase our working relationship, that include getting some metrics so we can really start assessing whether or not this system is really working, and that 9 million, 11 million, however much money ends up coming to the county is equitably distributed and really starts to really effectively address this crisis we have.
The other thing that we didn't talk about that we have also asked them to do is to identify for us if we're not able to help someone that calls through that system and asks for assistance, what is the reason we haven't been able to? Because it may very well be that we then, we're focusing on, and I only use this one because it's the first one that comes to my mind, mental health services, but we're not having the issue there that we've identified this other thing that never really seems to be able to get that person up off the streets. So we've asked them to identify, okay, what are those service deficiencies or those gaps in services as well, so that we can then begin to address those, because if we're noticing that there's a gap that's never filled and it keeps returning the person back to the street, doesn't really do us any good to keep doing that. We need to figure out what is that barrier that we again need to address.
Is there any way we can include some language in here of some kind of periodic reporting?
Yeah.
So we start to see exactly what our monies, what we're getting our monies, or get our money's worth. That would be my comment. Thank you.
Councilman,
Yeah, I guess just to clarify in my own mind, some months ago there were two vet housing projects. We only got one because the Planning Commission had denied it and it was appealed to us. So I guess out of this discussion, will we get all those?
What I would intend to do through this is to have you, even if it's just here's what action the Planning Commission took, but we're working through our zoning systems now to make sure that you're aware of that.
Okay. Okay.
Rather than someone having to appeal to you.
That's right. That's
right.
Because we wouldn't have heard about it at all unless it had been appealed. So
That's right.
And this will take care of it.
Well,
we'll know about
this
it.
and what
We'll at
we're
least
also
be
doing
noticed.
internally, because remember, we're also doing a development code update, so that, again, we're looking at all of our systems related to the processes under the development code to make sure those are corrected.
Councilman Valdivia.
Thank you. Andrea, one of the quickest, non-bureaucratic, non-red tape way to do this is prior to you might have remembered this on when you first were here. We had a routing sheet, and I've insisted on that for years. For the 6 years that I've been here, 2 to 3 years in, we had routing sheets from community development. It was just a simple memo, and we were copied. It was a DERC cover sheet, and out of courtesy, the council, the respective council, wherever that was being built, was copied on it. If we were noticed that, that would be super helpful, because then we can start asking questions about that and not having to go through some bureaucratic legislative hearing. Just copy us on any applications for housing of homeless services, and that's a simple solution. All right, moving on to the. I lost my train of thought. I think, Jim, you had a good point here. My idea is we want to make sure that the 211, back to the 211 system, because I think it's important. I see that as this is the filter. When the 211 is activated and people are calling it, that's my concern. Here's the second opportunity for us. When I've been in patrol cars, I have heard from our patrolmen that one of the biggest things, and I hope that HEAP funding, if there is some mental health funding here, can we please tell our County Board of Supervisor, Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Ramos, hire a psychiatric tech here that has the capabilities at Central Detention, instead of our patrolmen driving 30 to 40 minutes in traffic or an hour to West Valley. If there's some HEAP funding here, hire me some psychiatric techs and a prescribing PA or an NP at the Central Detention on 3rd Street, and we don't have to transport them to ARMC, or we don't have to waste time, 40 minutes of windshield time going to Rancho Cucamonga. Right. So if in fact that can reduce patrolmen's windshield time, and I can get a patrolman back on the city streets faster and quicker, let's do it. So that would be my request, is that we also include some HEAP funding for Central Detention. Let's get a psychiatric tech or whatever we got to do for mental health services. The deranged, mentally ill need services.
Yes.
Let's get some services here locally.
And again, that is one of the items that the county has requested funding for.
Councilman Mulvihill?
Yes, I think the Sheriff's Department has the HOPE program, and it's my understanding that these HOPE teams, they really don't, they talk with the homeless, but they don't do anything.
Right.
I mean, presumably, the idea is over time, they'll, after visits periodically, but the homeless are still on the streets, nothing's happening to them. And so, whatever the county is doing, and I guess there was an awards banquet a couple of weeks ago that I went to, that there was about 4 or 5 sheriff's officers there who were involved with the program. And again, it's the program that they use. And they're not really doing anything with the homeless, as far as they talk to them. Yeah. So hope's not enough. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion?
Yeah.
All right.
Second.
And we have a second? Call for the vote.
Motion made by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Mulvihill, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is item number 23. Item number 23 is a public hearing. This public hearing is now open. This is the first reading of amendment of Chapter 10.52 of the San Bernardino Municipal Code to reduce the speed limit on Arrowhead Avenue between Highland Avenue and Thompson Place from 45 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. Alex?
Before Alex begins, thank you, Alex, I wanted just to make a prefatory comment. we received a petition related to this item. When staff did the analysis, we were really responding to the petition, which identified a particular area that they wanted us to study. Subsequent, though, we've had other inquiries about other areas immediately adjacent to this. We are going to go back and study those areas as well. But for the purposes of this evening's discussion, we're discussing the speed limit on Arrowhead between Highland Avenue and Thompson Place. And again, after subsequent conversations with some of the individuals, residents that live in that area and others, we will create a broader study area. But at this point, we're presenting the analysis on that one stretch of roadway. Alex?
Good evening, Mayor and Council and residents of San Bernardino. The item before you tonight is the staff recommendation is for the Council to adopt Ordinance MC 1502 of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, amending Chapter 10.52 of the San Bernardino Municipal Code to reduce the speed limit on Arrowhead Avenue between Highland Avenue and Thompson Place from 45 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour, and authorize the staff to implement striping modification. Just the background on this, this item was discussed with the council back in August 15 of 2018, and the council at the time gave direction to staff to go back and look at other ways that we can help reducing the speed within the area. The speed limit studies that we conducted in that area suggested that the speed limit to stay at 45 miles per hour, but we are asking to reduce that by 5 miles and make it 40 miles per hour. And I will let Mahmoud Khudr is our traffic engineer. I'll let him go through how the study's been determined and how we determine speed limits. And we also look at other configuration of the street to see if we can implement what we call a road diet, just to make sure that is the behavior of the drivers, just to make them slow down for a little bit. And then hopefully in the future, a year and a half from now, we go back and do another study to see if did indeed reduce the speed limit on that street. So I'll let Mahmoud talk about the studies and we can discuss that later.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, we did the study during the last year. We looked into the Arrowhead after the 2016 speed limits study. We had to look at the 5 different sections along the Arrowhead Avenue, starting just north of the Highland Avenue, all the way to Thompson. So we looked at 5 sections and we did the traffic and survey for that one, just to confirm what's the speed limit in that sections. As you see in the slides there, the 5 section came up about close to the 45 miles per hour, which is the current one. Looking into this study and the detail of the area, we recommended that we reduce the speed limit into the 40 miles per hour instead, and look into another option to enhance the driver kind of ability to slow down by doing the road diet, which is with striping not the whole corridor, but the available 4 sections down to 2 sections, creating kind of 2 lanes of the traffic north and south, and instead of the 4 lanes. With that 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, we can create a buffer zone between a bike lane and the traffic, as well as leave the parking area available for the residents. That's the recommendation. It will help the driver to slow down in the area. And again, like Alex suggested, that year or year and a half from now, we can redo the study for that section and see if this the reduction it happened or not.
I just wanted to emphasize that as what we're doing here currently, and that's between what? The 2 lanes?
Between 28th and...
Between 28th and Thompson. Currently, we have 2 lanes in each direction for traffic movement for vehicles. So the inside lanes are 10 feet each, and the outside lane is 18 feet to allow for parking. So we heard the residents' concern about them backing up from their driveways when the car was speeding. So what we're suggesting at this time is to the inside 2 lanes is to make them a 12-foot travel lane, and then the lanes, the outside lane, is to take that out and make them a parking, which is 8 feet. 8 feet. I'm not sure if this is have pointer, but 8 feet wide and 6 feet wide for a bike lane, and then 2 feet buffer between the bike lane and the travel lane for vehicles. That's what we call the road diet. That basically improve in other communities been used to reduce speed for a little bit. With that, I just wanted to also.
Just to go back a little bit in the slides here. The first one here, we're looking just a little bit north of the Highland Avenue, where the street in that block is 4 lane, and immediately it's changed down to the 2 lanes section, as you see here. So that continued to be between the 23rd all the way to 28th as a kind of two lane sections with the parking it on the side. So that section will continue to be there until 28. Within that section, there is a school and a church, and the speed limit there for the school is 25 miles per hour. And once we get into the 28th Street, north of that, it becomes the 4 lane, widening. And there where is the 4 lanes, 2 northbound and 2 southbound with the parking lane. Some of the background for the requirement for the speed limit, as you know, the vehicle code is allowed the city to set, the specific speed limit for the streets and within their boundaries. In order to do that, to enforce the radar speed limit, a study has to be done, which is the traffic survey on the roads. The first step is in completing the traffic and study survey is to conduct the actual survey on the traffic traveling on that specific road, and the speed limit is then set based on the prevailing speed with the study, which is at or below the 85 percentile of that speed data. Typically, the prevailing speed is then rounded down either up or down to the closest 5 miles per hour. In this case, came very close to 45 for this specific street. We reduce it down to the 40, and that's our recommendation. Again, here the summary of the 5 sections. We looked into all the sections just to make sure all the speed captured. S-curve, that's where the data comes in for every section. Plot it in. We look at the 85 percentile, and with that, it's draw down to what is the speed within that 85 percentile of the traffic. From that point, our recommendation is again to go back and help the community here by, just concept plan, for striping to stripe and reduce the traveling lane from 4 to 2. And that's a result of the section. The bottom section is the 4 lanes, and the top section is the 2 lanes if we're implementing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? We'll now open this up to public comments. Anyone who wants to speak, please stand and be sworn in. Yeah. Could you please, anybody else want to be, right, if you'll stand and be sworn in.
If you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth for the first reading amendment of Chapter 10.52 of the San Bernardino Municipal Code to reduce the speed limit on Arrowhead Avenue between Highland Avenue and Thompson Place from 45 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour?
35 miles an hour, I tell the truth.
Great.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about...
Mr. You weren't called up yet.
Okay, Michael Meister. I live on Arrowhead.
So the first people are going to be Jesse and Gabriel.
Oh, okay, they can go. They're my neighbors. We're all in the neighborhood watch.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Hello, I'm Jesse. This is my wife, Gabby. Good evening, council members and mayor-to-be.
Good evening.
Wherever he went. Yeah, good evening. Yeah, our concern is the speed limit and the backing out and what do you call it, the just the opportunity to back out. It's a lot of times you back out and then you have to pull back in because of the palm trees that are on the street and the cars parked on the side. It's hard to see. The visibility is not good, which that's how these two got head on collided, which probably that's where his injuries came from. And it's it's a nuisance, and we've seen other accidents up at the corner of Marshall and Arrowhead where the van ran the light, went through someone's front yard, the car went up on its side, ran into two parked cars, a little infant inside, they had to pull them out. And so yeah, we've been only residents for 5 years, but you know.
We've seen, there are many walkers there in the evenings especially, and that's when the high speed, and they start speeding and racing one another, and it's just ridiculous, the speeds that they go at, 70, 80, and I'm not sure, when you're seeing this percentile, the time frame of the day, the 85 percentile, because there's a lot of racing going on beyond that speed limit that you mentioned, 45 or 44, and so it's just, there's children playing out in the sidewalks above 34th Street, and it's really a high concern because there are many walkers in the evening and in the morning as well. So we're hoping for 35 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And
I do appreciate the idea with the bike lane. I think that is a good idea. I think it should still go forward, like Valencia Street is, and it'll cut down on the drag racing. Probably won't cut down on the people going 90, in the late night hours when they're passing, 33rd Street. But we do have that. It'll just cut down on the drag racing. It would be nice if we had more officers around, but I know the situation, and you're concerned with officers being freed up. That's good. So, that's a start, that buffer. Yeah.
thank you for your time.
Yeah, just
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Michael Meister?
Okay. My name's Michael Meister. I'm going to run over 3 minutes, I'm sure. I'm kind of, this survey that you guys have done, I would love to have copies. I know our Arrowhead Watch Group would like to. We all live on Arrowhead between 30th and Thompson. I'm almost crippled. I'm glad to be alive today because of the speed limit. You guys do a survey, and everyone's going 45, so then, of course, it reaches up to 50. Oh, then you say, well, you'll go down to 45. My accident report, it already has Arrowhead at 35 miles per hour. If you're going north, you make that light at 30th Street, and you've got 3 more blocks until you have to go to another light, and if you make that light, you got 2 more blocks. So you have 8 blocks to speed on. You guys should go out there at the middle of the night, listen to them zoom up and down, zoom up and down. It's really rough, You can't pull in and out. Those trees, those palm trees are 2 feet diameter. There's, 3 blocks of them. There's 36, 50 palm trees. You can't see anything. East Street is 40 miles an hour. There are 3 stoplights, 1 every 2 blocks. We have nothing on Arrowhead. We have families, we have children, we have people walking their pets, we have elderlies going with power walks. They're afraid to cross the streets even because there's no stop signs, there's no nothing. It's really unreal. I mean, we're waiting for somebody to get killed. We like we're talking about this other van. There's accidents at Marshall's all the time. Pull the police records out. I mean, this is a serious problem. We're waiting for somebody to get killed. 35 should be the limit. Mountain is 40, and they have 1-lane traffic. They have stop signs all over. They have the bike lane. They have lights. 30th Street is 45 miles an hour, and there's a stoplight every 2 blocks, and one side of that street is nothing but the freeway. There's no buildings. There's no pedestrian traffic. This is bad. We're going to wait. Some child's going to get killed. Someone else in a car. It's bad. I mean, it needs to be 35 miles an hour. And that's all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councilman Hall here.
Yes, Mayor. And I guess, Mitch, if you could probably tee up some of those slides. I just have some comments to make. It seems, what we have is a disagreement. I appreciate what the traffic engineer has done, traffic department has done, but it seems their purpose and the whole idea of the prevailing speed and going by the 85th percentile is to present accusations of having speed traps. What the residents are concerned about is traffic safety. Yes. And there's two different points there. This whole operation, if you listen to the 85th percentile and ask why we do that, it's because of a state law about speed traps. Well, you know what a speed trap is. You can sort of see it on Arrowhead Avenue. If you had 45 miles an hour going up Arrowhead, then you come to the school and it drops down to 25, you'd have a motor officer out there with a radar gun. If you go 1 mile an hour over it, you're trapped. Well, the point is, these people are not concerned about speed traps. I'm not concerned about speed traps. They're concerned about safety. Let me show you the, maybe I can just show you from here. This pretty much, Mitch, why don't you take the next slide? And next slide. This is pretty much the ones that I showed you last time, and I guess this thing is not working. Yeah, there you go. It's just not going that far enough. Anyway, is it going up here? Yeah. Let me go. Here. Mitch, when you put it on the PowerPoint, it messed up my series of slides. So anyway.
Turn on your mic.
Pardon me?
Turn the mic on.
Got to do that. And but then these are the trees that the residents are talking about, and also the hedges. And I've shown you these slides before. And again, looking at, as you're pulling out the driveway, you're not looking at this openness like this. You're looking at trees head on, in which you can't see more than about, I don't know, what is that? About 30 feet, maybe? And again, and also, too, with the traffic diet that's being proposed, you're also going to have parked cars there as well, which, again, is another barrier. And what I wanted to show, of course, this is the school. Let me get over to where I wanted to get to. By the way, Mount Vernon Avenue is 35. And it was mentioned here before. There were very few residents here and so forth. It's a commercial street, very few cars in it. It's 35. I mean, compare that safety-wise with what you have on Highland Avenue with the palm trees and the parked cars and so forth. Here is Sterling Avenue. Sterling Avenue, as you can see, is 40 miles an hour. It's being proposed for Arrowhead Avenue. There's no residences here. There's no palm trees. There's no, when I was in planning, somehow the traffic problem for residential areas was the conflict between modes of traffic, the conflict between vehicular traffic. And on Highland, on Arrowhead Avenue, you've got all kinds of vehicular traffic conflicts that are taking place. And so, again, I agree with the residences that this is a safety problem. And as the one speaker indicated, he's been part of a traffic accident. He's not worried about speed traps. Right? Well, there's no enforcement anyway. I'm not quite sure. When was the last time we saw a ticket being written? Never. Yeah. Well, speed traps are not a problem. It's safety, the day-to-day pulling in and out of your driveway, and again, across the street and so forth. And by the way, here is Arrowhead. This is Waterman Avenue, and I don't think you can see it, but I think there's a 40-mile-an-hour stop sign right there. This is Marshall, and there's 40 miles an hour right there on Waterman.
But those no homes.
Exactly. Mitch, can we go back to the first one?
We have 110 homes.
Exactly, and 110 driveways, and with bushes and so forth. And so this is what the problem is that we have on Arrowhead Avenue. And again, not concerned about speed traps. That's the whole argument here of the 85% percentile. It's a safety problem. And it's not going to go away if you put more cars being parked on the street here, because that's going to present yet another barrier to traffic. So, one issue, of course, is enforcement. And again, the residents are asking for 35 miles an hour. I think given the circumstances, and you have more parking on the street if this traffic diet goes through, you really slow the traffic down. We'll be safer. It'll give you more, it'll give the drivers more time to see the traffic coming out of those driveways. And it'll give the people pulling out of those driveways and people crossing the street more time to see the oncoming traffic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Nickel?
Yeah, and I heard mention of stop signs, and again, it sounds like the real issue is, and I'm just looking at that picture, that's sort of an invitation for some of these street racers when they see a street like that. That's big time. We've got some folks in my neighborhood that we're dealing with that like to race up and down some streets a block away from me as well. And yeah, no, and it's a problem.
I'd like to remind the audience that you've had your time for public speaking, so
No,
please allow the speakers to speak uninterrupted.
Yeah, but I do agree with the residents. This is a safety issue, and I think what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is what combination of speed limits and other tools in our toolkit could effectively reduce the speed. Obviously, perhaps stop signs. Is there any ability to increase the number of stop signs along Arrowhead?
We'll need to run the study for the location that's
okay. And are there? And it sounds like, and I'll be honest, I like the bike lane issue for a number of reasons, but to the point of some of the comments, that may not necessarily completely address the issue either. But for this particular thoroughfare in the city in particular, I think we do have a problem. And one other design feature that I've seen in other places that I don't know if we can do it here or what would be involved, but creating islands in the middle of the street that provide for some, you can put some landscaping or some decomposed granite or something in there that serves as a feature, but because it's in the center of the street, it tends to provide a deterrent and inhibit that street racing as well. So I think I understand the argument here that this isn't just a speed issue. This is a design and engineering issue. How do we design this particular thoroughfare in the city in such a way that it inhibits that type of unlawful behavior, street racing? And I think I'd like to look at. I think you've done a good job. Don't get me wrong. I like the work you've done so far, but I see the argument here that we may need to do maybe a little bit more here and look at some engineering opportunities and solutions that can address this issue even further.
Mr. Mayor?
If I could clarify what Councilmember or the Mayor Pro Tem has suggested, would you also like, because I think one of the things that we've heard is a concern with on-street parking, would you also like us to look at the on-street parking and potential restrictions in certain areas, as well as some of the tree issues?
I would defer to Councilmember Mulvihill. This is his district, and I will.
I think Ms. Cavajo has got some suggestions in terms of how we might be able to accommodate a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yeah, thank you. I think at the last council meeting where we discussed this, we talked about how staff could look at the different activities that are occurring out there, including any types of accidents, any complaints from the residents, and that they could adopt findings. So I think what you have before you this evening is that staff actually went back and did that. You may recall back in August, they were recommending a speed limit of 45 miles an hour. So what you have in your staff report tonight is the findings that your staff went back, they listened to you, they went back and looked at those findings, and they proposed them to you tonight. And they're saying, council, if you can agree with us with these findings, we can reduce this down to 40. The idea, and I think as staff explained, is after they reduce it to 40, they'll go back and continue to look. If those conditions continue to exist, then they will have made the findings under the law to come back and reduce it down to 35. So just unfortunately, no, because you have to make the findings. So I don't second guess staff. So staff has done a good job. They've gone back and staff has represented. These are the findings we can make. Staff's recommendation is we don't think we can make the findings at this time to take you all the way down to 35. So that's a 10-mile-an-hour difference from the study that was done.
Well, and let me just clarify my remarks, because you could have, in theory, a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on this street, and but for, enforcement, that's not going to stop the street racing.
Right.
I mean, we already have it at 40, and they're going 90 miles an hour. So my issue here is it's more than just a speed limit issue. This is a design issue. When you've got a big, wide street like this with big palm trees, you're just asking for a major accident and something really devastating to happen. So my whole point is, I like the bike lanes personally. I think that's a step in the right direction. I appreciate what staff is doing here. Appreciate what you did in terms of doing your due diligence on the speed limit. But part of me says, if we could throw a couple of little islands along that street there, spread them out, a couple blocks, it's not going to be a street racer's paradise anymore. They're going to go somewhere else.
And so what you may want to do is adopt the findings this evening, but add to them that we do a study again in 6 months and in a year, and at the same time also look at other traffic calming measures like raised medians.
Yes, I'd like to, and I know we had this issue on Little Mountain.
Yes.
I mean, we had not only street race, we had people flying off the road.
Yeah.
So, and I know staff did some speed calming, whatever we call it, but there's some rumble strips or whatever we call them.
And it was a two-step process, if you recall.
Yeah.
Because, again, we made some changes.
Right.
And that helped us with the 85th percentile and some other things, and then we
Right.
came back with
And
another.
and I think that, maybe, and again, I'll defer to the council member and the residents of this area in terms of what you think is most appropriate, but I do think that we can find some measures that we can put in place, some engineering solutions that can really, I think, address the core issue here, which is let's stop the street racing.
And I think that's exactly what the plan was. We wanted to be able to come up with something that we could enforce, because really enforcement is a huge chunk of it. And being able to follow the warrants allows us to enforce.
Are we adequately enforcing right now, though? I think
Well,
that's the
that's-
issue we have in our neighborhood, is to get an officer, a traffic officer up there. Right now, it's not.
But I think what we
It's not practical.
wanted to do is bring in as many tools to the situation as we can. By the road diet, you're trying to change behavior, and that's really what we need to do, is change behavior. Enforcement is part of that, but it's not the only solution either, because police can only be there so much.
Exactly, and I think that's an issue too, is we just don't have the enforcement capacity
So
at this particular time
why we
to strictly
chose-
enforce the speed limit.
Yeah, why we chose the striping is because that's something we can go out and do tomorrow.
Yep.
I mean, we can do it very quickly, and we can start changing behavior immediately. If it's effective, and you start seeing the behavior changes, then we start looking at, are there bigger, more permanent capital improvements we can make? But it is a process of changing behavior, and absolutely, going to the road diet immediately takes that out of being the two-lane runway. That people see that, hey, I want to see if I can go faster than him, or her, I should say. It takes that away. It does take more space. Now, keep in mind we're creating a formal parking lane, but that doesn't mean more people are going to park there. What you see is kind of what it's going to be there, but what it gives is a gap and a place for people to back out of their driveways and have a safe zone that they don't think a car is going to be coming 45, 50 miles an hour coming up on them as they're trying to pull out into an active lane. They now have a buffer zone for that. So it isn't the ideal solution, and I don't think there is really a silver bullet, for this issue, but it's creating a kind of a plethora of tools to be able to address that.
Could we do something like along the curbs where you would have the parking, maybe every block or every other block, just a concrete buffer that kind of sticks out into that parking lane? Because here's the issue I have. You can have a parking lane, and it's still a runway. It's still a runway. Well, but what she just says, you aren't going to have any cars there because it's going to be the same situation as you have right now.
There will be as many as there are now.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying now is, and when the street is clear of cars, you got a runway. So, my only thing is, even just a concrete strip running out into that parking lane every couple blocks, all of a sudden that runway disappears. You don't have a runway anymore.
Well, we could also look at some kind of, we would need to check that from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm looking at this problem, and I'm understanding the viewpoint of the residents, because I'll be honest, we have a very similar problem in our neighborhood, and I too am concerned that I'm going to get a call one day and somebody's going to get wiped out on the street, and I want to be able to say with honesty, we did everything we possibly could.
If nothing else, one thing that we can maybe think about, I think that kind of speed bumps might be an issue, but maybe, and these guys may tell me I'm completely wrong, and it's because they're more of an expert than I am, but reflective diagonal stripes or something like that, that kind of makes it feel more solid. Those are the things that we can look at, absolutely.
Councilman Mobile.
And that's what I was going to ask about. Could there be a rumble strip between the driving lane that you're going to have and the bicycle lane?
There is one.
No, you don't.
In the
It's
diagram.
perfectly, no.
There was?
There's no rumble strip along there. We're talking about a rough patch.
No, this is just a
Wake
striping
'em up.
of the buffer.
To wake people up that they're off the drive lane. Can we do that? Can we, let's agree to do that. Also, too, at Holy Rosary Academy, we talked about this before, about having the 25 mile an hour on the street itself, and maybe having a rumble strip there to wake people up that in fact are coming to because there's 170 students there. There's no place to drop them off but on the street. They're on the street, picking them up, dropping them off. And people are standing in the street. And again, it's at that point in time, there is only one lane in each direction. And so people, when they get out of the car, they're standing in the drive lane. So again, at Holy Rosary Academy, having, again, on the street, the 25 mile an hour, and maybe having a rumble strip there to wake them up that you're coming into a school zone.
We've already programmed in the painting, and we'll look at the rumble.
We will look at the rumble. I just would like to remind Councilman, the 25 mile per hour is when children are present only.
Mm-hmm.
So that road, after the children are gone, it becomes back to 40 mile per hour.
I'm worried about when the kids are there.
Yeah.
And again, there's not much space there. And again, they're there in the mornings from 8 o'clock until 3 o'clock. Plus, on holy days, they go to church and they cross the street there.
We will certainly look at it, and we'll do whatever is needed to it, but without, looking at the books and what can we do and we cannot do.
But you will have a strip there to separate between the drive lanes and the bicycle lane. In this area.
Will do, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And again, if you want to add the additional requirement that we come back and restudy it.
6 months?
6 months to a year. A year it's more likely.
The point is, if you're if this road diet is effective, then it should lower the speed.
Yes, it should.
And that's exactly what ends up happening, because remember, the speed limit wasn't set arbitrarily by our traffic engineers. The speed limit wasn't set arbitrarily by someone. The speed limit was set by the people who were driving on that street when we did the study. So people forget that, right? So people forget that when we do the study, we don't make up the numbers. They actually go by the average speed that people are driving in those areas. So what could happen in this situation is if all of the road diet works and the reduction works, then at that time, when we go back and do the study, that 85th percentile arguably should be lower, which again then leads us and gives us the ability to reduce it down.
I don't want to, start an argument here, but that hasn't always been the case. So.
And Sonia's talking about what we're going to do going forward, because that is the way cities establish those speed limits, based on true engineering and analyses.
Would you fill out a slip and then be sworn in? And then we'll give you an opportunity. We just need to just fill that and then pass it to the clerk so we have your name.
So, and one thing that I might also mention just to the council, two things that just concern me. Remember that sometimes our streets and their given conditions are not unnecessarily unsafe in the condition they're in. They might be made unsafe by the behavior of people who choose to drive erratically or exceed the speed limit. I think that's really important because in terms of discussing potential liability at some point in the future, if it's there, it's really important to remember that these streets have been designed this way, I would venture to say, 50, 70, 80, 90 years in the way these streets have been designed. And if we saw a high rate of accidents on these streets, we would be coming back with the findings telling you to designate this street at 30 miles an hour. So we have to use the evidence and the facts that we have. And that I talked with staff and gave them the information in terms of how to make findings, and I can guarantee you if there was a pattern here, they would be here tonight recommending 35. So it's kind of this process that we're going through.
Thank you.
And just be careful about us making conclusions that the street is unsafe. It's not that the street is unsafe, it's the way people choose to drive on the street that makes it unsafe.
We have another speaker. Would you please let the city clerk swear you in? Thank you.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth for the amendment of Chapter 10.52 of the Municipal Code?
I do.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
Don Woodford. I'm one of the residents on Arrowhead and one of the people who was involved in the automobile accident that was referred to earlier. I just have two observations that I wanted to share with everyone here. First of all, when Michael Meister mentioned that the paperwork regarding the accident indicated 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, that wasn't something that some officer inadvertently wrote incorrectly. That's printed on the form for Arrowhead Avenue. The police believe that 35 miles an hour is the speed limit in that area, or at least that's what their paperwork would indicate. A second observation, unrelated to that, is that these slides of Arrowhead Avenue are not really telling the whole story, because generally speaking, there are always cars parked along in front of most every house. As you pull out of your driveway, it's very difficult to see any distance at all. And so I just encourage you to do whatever you can. I realize that studies have value, but we really need results and not an awful lot more time given over to studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public speakers that wanted to speak on this issue? Thank you.
So again, Mr. Mayor, we recommend that the council adopt the ordinance related to the speed limits, that we make that amendment, that we install rumble strips in addition to just the painted markings, and that we revisit this in 6 months after the installation of all the traffic control devices, because if we study it again, we may come back and we'll report the findings to you. It may very well be that we see enough change in the behavior that we are able to reduce it even further. The other thing, we can look at other more permanent traffic improvements that would help with center medians or something of that nature that again would help create that feeling that you need to reduce your speed because it's not safe to go faster.
Thank you. Did you want to make the motion?
No.
I'd just also like to clarify that the recommendation would be to introduce the ordinance
I'm
for
sorry,
first
yes.
reading and to adopt at your next meeting.
Do we have a motion?
This point of discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman?
Thank you. I think, Ms. Miller, I'd like to see all of that on a capital improvement plan. The traffic calming measures, that's pretty invasive. That's a high degree of investment and, kind of forethought and planning. I'd like to see all of the traffic calming measures and islands on a CIP. I think that's the most appropriate. For right now, today, the rumble strips, the markings. Mr. Mulvihill, I didn't hear, I'm kind of all over the place because I'm hearing different thoughts and ideas. Are you comfortable with 35 miles an hour?
Yes.
So let's do it.
Okay, well, so
Let's do it. I'm going to make a motion. I mean,
So let me tell you.
I respect counsel,
Yeah,
but
Yeah, so, look, and I do, and I have a saying, choices have consequences. So city councils can make any choices you
That's right.
want as long as they're legal.
right.
But one of the consequences that you would have if you did that at 35, and maybe better explained to you by your police chief, is the ability of your chief and his officers to cite and the consequences as to whether those citations would be upheld. Now, if you're going to set the speed limit at 35 because you think that it's going to change behavior, that may or may not be the case, right? But if you set it at 35 and someone decides they're going to be driving at 45 and you decide you're going to send an enforcement officer out, the consequence of that is that if someone challenges those tickets, they're going to be successful. So understand the consequences of your choice.
I'd like to make a motion, moved at 35 miles an hour with the support of Councilman Mulvihill and the traffic rumble strips. That's my motion.
And if you do that, I think the council does need to explain their findings as to why, the additional findings. So it is your choice to do that, but what is making you reach that conclusion in terms of your findings?
Well, because of the barriers, because of the testimony that was made by the citizens who have been there and they've seen multiple accidents. And I can guarantee you that not all the accidents are reported.
So moved. Mr. Mulvihill?
Okay, so moved.
Councilmember Marquez?
To our city manager, do we have any idea of how many accidents, say, for example, we've had in that particular street for 2017? Just a ballpark figure?
Yes, we have that information right here, right now.
Reported accidents, and I'm sure, as indicated earlier, there have been accidents that have not been reported.
2017?
We have 6 accidents in 2017.
6 accidents for 27, that's too many.
The whole stretch.
That's just too many, that's
Yeah, the whole-
excessive.
That should be a finding, too, because of the excessive amount of accidents. This is a
Right.
residential area, and there's people and kids,
Right.
bicycles.
Okay. The accidents is not related to speed, with the exception of one of them.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
The accidents that we have on record is not related to speed, except for one accident only
On Highland Avenue.
on Highland.
I still didn't hear all that. What?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, the accidents that we just stated, 6 of them in the corridors, are one of them related to speed, the rest is not speed related. However, the one in the speed, it's at the Highland Avenue and Arrowhead intersection, which is commercial.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Yeah, please cast your vote. Mr. Mayor, for point of order, would the city clerk read the substitute motion that I made? Motion made by Councilmember Valdivia to adopt the the staff recommendation, changing the speed limit to 35 miles per hour and to authorize the staff to implement striping modifications.
Road diet, the road diet that was spoken, the term they used was road diet.
Road diet?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that was seconded by Councilmember Mulvihill.
And we'll revisit in 6 months to maybe lower it more.
Do you want to include that as part of the motion?
We will revisit in 6 months.
Are you okay with that? That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next is item number 24. That closes the public hearing. Next is item number 24. There's also a public hearing. This public hearing is now open. This is to read by title only, waive further reading, and introduce ordinance number MC 1509, adding Councilman to Title II of the San Bernardino Municipal Code, establishing procedures for filling city council and mayoral vacancies.
Council, at the last meeting, we received direction from you about the process that you wanted to utilize for filling council and mayoral vacancies. We've prepared that ordinance consistent with the direction that was provided, that we utilize the prior city charter as the guidepost. You have that before you this evening. We're recommending that you read by title only, waive further reading, and introduce the ordinance.
Move for approval.
Second. Any further discussion?
I doubt it.
The motion was made by Councilmember Valdivia, second by Mr. Barrios, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you, public, for coming out and expressing your concerns. We appreciate that. And thank you, Councilman Mulvihill. This meeting is adjourned until Wednesday, November 21st, in the council chambers. Thank you.